sticking to the model. 4 minutes and 16 seconds to change. Not just Toronto, let's face it, the world. So, Dave Meslin, are you in the house? Yes, he is. I didn't even get a chance to ask you a question. I don't think we need to go through any formalities. We do need to give Dave Meslin a little bit of our attention now. We're starting it. Let's bring it down. Lots of campaigning and strategizing in the room. Heavy thank you. So let's bring him on up here. Dave Meslin.
That was the funny joke.
The presentation overlaps a bit with Camille. We have to apologize for that. We didn't realize we were both doing the same topic. I'm sorry, Rosario Marquez here. Coming. So when I was in high school, I wanted to be president of the student council. Obviously with the slogan, "Men for Pres." But I was told I couldn't run because my grades were too low. So I started a voting reform campaign at high school to change the rules. This was 1991, my first political campaign. I got 300 students to sign a petition, and I launched an underground paper with a cover story about the unfair electoral system at our school. I didn't win the campaign, but I got addicted to community organizing and spent the next 20 years learning how to play politics. And one thing I learned during those projects is that most people feel completely excluded from City Hall and don't participate in the decision-making process. So in 2006, I launched City Idol that tried to create a new space in politics and tried to prove that there are young, creative, inspiring people who want to participate in the leadership role if they feel invited. Our 4 winners from City Idol ran for council, and during those campaigns, I realized that Toronto's election system is deeply flawed and essentially perpetuates the status quo. There are 4 clear indicators of a broken system. One is voter turnout. With less than 40% voting, clearly something is wrong and people feel disengaged. The second indicator is turnover. On average, only 1 sitting councillor is defeated in any Toronto election, sometimes 2. The third indicator is representation. As was mentioned earlier, Toronto prides itself on our diversity, but we only have 22% on council as visible minorities and 11% women. 10 seats in Scarborough, all men. Okay. The last indicator is fairness. In 2006, 14 candidates won their seats with less than 50% of the vote. 7 of them were incumbents, which means most of their constituents didn't want them back, and they won anyways. This brings us to Better Ballots. It's a new project that tries to raise awareness and spark dialogue about the need for voting reform in Toronto. Rather than endorsing a particular model, we're trying to encourage an open debate on all the options. Our first task is to build broad support for the idea of voting reform in the city. As you can see, in a few short months, we've built an unprecedented consensus around 2 points. First, that the current system is not working, and number 2, there are options worth looking at. So let's run through a few of those right now. Both Vancouver and Montreal have municipal parties that, at least officially, are independent from provincial and federal parties. And while some argue that City Council is better off with independent councillors, others argue that parties are already exist behind the scenes at City Hall, and it would be better if they were transparent. Montreal has a really interesting borough system. This is how it could look in Toronto, that essentially mitigates the consequences of amalgamation. The local council, each neighborhood elects their own council and their own mayor. New York City also elects president in each borough. Term limits, of course, is used all across the U.S. and American cities. It creates a guaranteed cycle of turnover and allows new faces on council more easily. Some argue that it's undemocratic and could cost us good politicians who deserve to get reelected, but let's look at it. Ranked ballots are used in many cities in the U.S. It's a simple and easy to implement solution that eliminates vote splitting, eliminates strategic voting, brings more voices into the election, and produces fairer results. It's used in San Francisco and Minneapolis. Multi-member districts, as we heard earlier, have many advantages. They allow for outcomes that are proportional. For example, if 20% of the voters believe in a certain idea, right now they'll get shut out in every ward, but if a ward has 5 representatives, they will win one of those seats. The downside is that the wards become very large. There are many other options worth looking at, such as at-large seats and weekend voting. This chart shows 30 cities and who is using some of these ideas I talked about. Toronto is the only city that hasn't explored any of these options. Our job at Better Ballots is to raise awareness and to put this issue on the map. We're off to a great start. We had the cover of iWeekly last week. We have a lot of supporters and volunteers. But what we really need is you. We need your energy, we need your creativity, we need your time, and we need your ideas. You can visit our website, you can go to our Facebook group, you can also go to the Twitter thing if you're into that sort of stuff. Thanks to the organizers for putting this together. Thanks for inviting us. We're Better Ballots, and we're ready.